Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition, and we turn now to poem 296. 1 year ago, jots what? Now, the syntax in this poem is going to challenge us a little bit, but I think we'll be okay once we have a bit of background knowledge. We are in some ways back to poem 247, What Would I Give to See His Face? Many have argued this is a Sam Boyle's poem, although it's very difficult to know exactly who it is she's referencing here. It is an anniversary of a parting of a kind. And the word anniversary only gets used one time in all her poetry, and it's here. The scholar Wolfe, I'm going to follow a little bit of what Wolfe has to say on this one, calls this an anniversary poem. And I think we're going to have to ask the question, what exactly is it that stands behind the experience of this poem that makes Emily lament a year passing? Now, some have confused this poem with a birthday poem, and I don't think that's exactly what's going on here, although if you want to interpret it that way, feel free. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments, especially as we talk about our Big Five and the question of pain and suffering as the fifth of our Big Five, the question of theodicy. Why must there be pain and suffering in the world? Certainly we're going to encounter it here. I'm hopeful that you've already read the preceding 295 poems. We just finished with 295, Until Like Story. And if you have, then what you'll see here is not going to be remarkable, too remarkable anyway, because we will have seen this before. The lamenting of something that has passed, the grieving of an experience that Emily loved, and now it's no more a relationship. Ruth Miller has also commented on this poem, and I'm going to be borrowing somewhat from her observations as well. There was a remarkable experience, or a memorable experience, apparently a year ago, and she is dealing with it. We're not sure what. The scholar Alfred Herbergers has said it this way in My Wars Are Laid Away in Books. Quote, biographers must exercise great caution in reading these narratives, end quote. And I'm hopeful that I can be respectful of that fact as well. But notice the movement here from the child's voice to a woman's voice as she comes to accept the passing. A year ago, something happened. Also notice the dialogue form that happens first with God and then with whoever it is she's speaking with. She says it this way. 1 year ago, jots what? God, spell the word. I can't. Was it grace? Not that. Was it glory? That will do. Spell slower. Glory. Such anniversary shall be, sometimes, not often, in eternity, when farther parted than the common woe. Look, feed upon each other's faces, so in doubtful meal, if it be possible, their banquets true. I tasted careless then, I did not know the wine, came once a world. Did you? Oh, had you told me so, this thirst would blister easier now. You said it hurt you most. Mine was an acorn's breast, and could you know how fondness grew in shaggier vest? Perhaps I couldn't, but had you looked in, a giant eye to eye with you, had been no acorn then. So 12 months ago, we breathed, then dropped the air, which bore it best. Was this the patientest? Because it was a child, you know, who could not value air. If it be elder, mean most pain, I'm old enough today, I'm certain then, as old as thee, how soon? 1 birthday more, or 10? Let me choose. Ah, sir, none. Note that we begin with 1 and we end with none, which is, and her ability to kind of bring together the power of definitions and number value, and the way they're conflated, Wolfe will say it that way, is remarkable in this poem. Notice, whatever happened, and again, we don't know who this poem is to, we don't know anything about it, but we do know that 1 year ago, something translinguistic happened. We've used this phrase a number of times with our study of Emily. In other words, beyond words. Here is a poet gifted with words who cannot come up with the right words to talk about it, so she calls on God. 1 year ago, jots, what? Jots, by the way, is only used one time in all of her poetry, and it's here. In other words, I got to come up with a word to explain what happened a year ago. God, she says, spell the word. I can't. By the way, notice, this isn't really a prayer. It's more like a demand to God. Spell the word, I can't. And it's almost as if God, in dialogue form, comes back to her and says, was it grace? And she'll go, no, not that. Was it glory? Taking us back, of course, to her use of the word glory in the preceding poem of 295. Was it glory? She says, fine, that will do. By the way, that phrase, that will do, will take us back to poem 279, right? Spell slower. Glory. It's almost like she's trying to, on slate or something, spell the word. Then, such anniversary shall be, again, only use of that word anniversary is here, sometimes, not often, in eternity. Notice the ironic tone or voice here. When farther parted than the common woe, as in death, look, feed upon each other's face. By the way, notice the present tense of feed. Feed upon each other's faces. So, in other words, she was face to face a year ago, an anniversary, face to face. In doubtful meal, can't help but think about the Last Supper because of the referencing to wine here in a little bit. If it be possible, their banquets true. In another version of this poem, it was real. I like true here, though, because it's the challenge of, did it really happen? She's almost like trying to remember in this anniversary poem what happened or transpired a year ago. I tasted careless. Notice the dashes, it's powerful. I tasted careless then, and I think careless is the key word of this poem. In other words, when a year ago, I was a child, I was young, I couldn't appreciate what was happening. I did not know the wine, this idea that there were things I was experiencing, I just couldn't understand it. And again, the wine here obviously can take us to the Last Supper of Christ, and Emily will often equate wine with that. But I want to follow as well to ground this idea of the Song of Solomon and the Feast of Love. You'll remember this in Song of Solomon 1:2, and then of course in 2:4. Thy love is better than wine. I did not know the wine. Notice capitalized. It's a fair reading, and I think Wolf suggests it, and I think it's a good way to see it. I did not know the wine came once a world. Did you? And now all of a sudden, oh, this is a poem where she's writing to someone. Maybe it's Sam Boyle's, to remind that a year ago something amazing happened, and she didn't appreciate it, and she wonders if he appreciated it. Did you? Oh, notice we go from oh to the last line, ah. Oh, had you told me so. It's almost as if she'll call it elder, she'll call him an elder, right? Had you told me so, she says it this way. This thirst would blister. Think about the thirst that Christ will have in John 19:28 on the cross, and it will be, again, the call for something to drink. Obviously, wine mixed with something will be referenced. This thirst would blister easier now. If I had only known, she said, what I was experiencing was so amazing, and now it's over. You said it hurt you most. Now we're going to get to some comparisons. Who was most affected by the loss of this anniversary? You said it hurt you most. Mine was an acorn's breast. Now, some people have pointed out that whoever it is she's talking to might have said to her something about her breasts being acorns, but I think there's another reading here, as in acorns grow into oak trees, right? In other words, in her way of seeing it, it was something so insignificant. It happened, but she's careless about it. It was so amazing now that I look back on it. And she says, could not know. We're back to that thing about knowledge. I did not know, I could not know. How fondness grew in shaggier vest. In other words, she's imagining herself as so small, emphasizing again her frailty. And it's like, I didn't realize how I was going to grow through this experience to become equal with you. And obviously now we're conflating time and the whole notion of aging, right? And shaggier vest, perhaps I couldn't. We've already commented on her powerful use of this word perhaps, and when we get to poem 696 it will be acres of perhaps. To me that's one of the most compelling words for Emily, because she's always kind of speculating on what could have been. I couldn't, she says, there's no way I could have understood it, but had you looked in, that is to say seen my inner soul, my inner spirit, a giant eye to eye with you had been, no acorn then. In other words, she is arguing she's matured now to become equal with him in terms of what she understands. And now we'll come to 12 months, as in a year ago. So, 12 months ago, we breathed, a brilliant way to say it, talk about pals, then dropped the air. It's brilliant, right? Brilliant way to say it. Which bore it best. In other words, which one bore it best? By the way, poem 144, this bore it best project. Who is it harder on, in other words? This thing that happened a year ago. Was this the patientists? Now, this is a word she makes. It's only used here. I was more patient than you, now that I realize it, she says, because it was a child, you know. Notice how she keeps coming back to the epistemology question. What can we really know in the moment when we're with our pal? You know, and could not value air. In other words, we, as children, we don't appreciate, we don't understand. What is it that Wordsworth calls it in Tintern Abbey? He calls it thoughtless youth, right? That thoughtless youth. It's like we just have a good time. We don't think about stuff. Then she'll finish. If to be elder, we're back to perhaps with if to be elder, again, in quotation marks, some have read into this, obviously, religious connotations as well, mean most pain, we're back to the theodicy question. It is only through pain and suffering that we grow and come to understand. She'll say it, I'm old enough. Only time she uses that phrase in all of her poetry. I'm old enough today, I'm certain. Then, as old as thee. And then she'll say, how soon? 1 birthday more or 10? She says, let me choose. Ah, sir, none. In other words, I don't need to have another year to know that what I lost a year ago from you, remarkable. And I was careless then. I didn't understand what I had, which takes us to 2a. I think her argument is it's hard to have a pal that you lose and you can't be with them. And you count down the time since you had that relationship. At 2b, I love the word choices here. I love the references and patience. I mean, isn't that not brilliant or what? At 3a, well, Dunn's valediction forbidding mourning does come to mind. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net as, as we kind of, that argument that he makes to his wife, as virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath comes, goes now, and some say no. So let us melt and make no noise. He's making that argument to his wife. I'll let you run into ground. I think you can easily read this passage that way. But I want to take us to 2 poems quickly as we finish. When we get there, we'll come back. 506. He touched me, so I lived to know that such a day permitted so. I groped upon his breast. It was a boundless place to me, and silenced as the awful sea puts minor streams to rest. And now I'm different from before, as if I breathed superior air, or brushed a royal gown my feet too that had wandered so. My gypsy face transfigured now to tenderer renown. Into this port if I might come, Rebecca to Jerusalem, would not so ravished turn, nor Persian baffled at her shrine lift such a crucifixal sign to her imperial son. We're going to have fun when we get to that one. And a few poems later, when we meet poem 511. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls and put them such in separate drawers for fear the numbers fuse. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's land. If certain when this life was out, that's yours and mine should be, I'd toss it yonder like a rind and take eternity. But now, uncertain of the length of this that is between, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. Finally, to own a poem like this, 3b, what was a time, because of pain, you were forced to grow up and to become the elder? I hope Emily's challenging you. Thank you.